The moment your wife tells you you're replaceable, something in you dies, and something else wakes up. That's exactly what happened to me. Lauren didn't yell. She didn't cry. She just stared at me in the mirror, lips painted blood red, and said, "You're replaceable, Elias. Don't ever forget it." And right there, every ounce of respect I had left for her evaporated. A man can be patient. A man can forgive. But when your own wife spits on your pride, that's the line. I grabbed her suitcase, tossed it onto the porch, and filed for divorce before she even reached the driveway. If you've ever felt that line snap inside you, stick around and hit follow. You're going to want to hear how this ends. After the night I threw her suitcase out and filed for divorce, people always ask, how did it get that bad? Truth is, it didn't start with that moment. It started way before it. My name's Elias Kane, 46, 15 years married to Lauren. On paper, we were doing fine. House in Frisco, 2 cars, good credit, neighbors who waved over the fence. From the street, we looked like a Christmas card. Inside, it was all performance. We had routines, not conversations. Schedules, not intimacy. Lauren started living out of her calendar. Networking events, executive dinners, late presentations. Always some urgent thing that somehow never happened before she got promoted. Most nights I'd be at my desk watching numbers move on my screens, trying to build a future for us, and I'd hear it, that low, smooth purr of a Bentley rolling up to my front door. She'd step out laughing, touching her hair, glowing in a way she never did around me anymore. I told myself it was stress, ambition, just a phase. A good husband supports his wife, I kept thinking. That was the first lie I told myself. And once you start lying to yourself, everything else gets easier to ignore. Those lies didn't stay small for long. Her work calendar turned into a graveyard of late-night excuses. 9 p.m. team review. 10:30 strategy session. Always can't miss, always just vague enough to sound legit. Funny how the most important meetings only existed after dark. Then came the black dress. Tight, expensive, not something we'd just toss in a cart at the mall. "Nice dress," I said. "When did we start shopping like CEOs?" She didn't even look up. "Graham bought it, said I should look the part for tonight." That one sat in my chest like a brick. Later I watched her from the window as that Bentley slid up to the curb. She checked her lipstick in the glass, smoothed her dress, and slipped into the passenger seat like she belonged there. She leaned in and kissed him. Cheek or not, I didn't care. It was too damn familiar. When she finally came home, she glanced at my screens, at the portfolio I'd built for us, and said, "How's your little investment hobby?" Little. That word burned. She went upstairs. I stayed in the kitchen, alone, staring at her laptop she'd left on the counter, screen still glowing, cursor blinking in the password box. That was the night I stopped ignoring the signs, and my finger moved toward the keys. Her laptop was still sitting on the kitchen counter, screen dim but not locked, cursor blinking like it was daring me. For 15 years I'd told myself, I'm not that guy. I don't snoop. I trust my wife. But her kiss in that Bentley, that little investment hobby jab, that killed the old rules. I tap the space bar. Password box pops up. I try the first stupid thing that comes to mind. Our old dog's name and a couple numbers. It opens. Just like that. Inbox explodes with meetings, invites, strategy dinners, strategy. I type Graham's name into the search bar. Threads light up. Some work talk, sure. But buried under it is a group chat with Lauren and a few other female execs laughing about presentations, about who wore what or didn't. Then I open the private thread. Lauren and Graham. Late night texts, inside jokes, comments about my house, about me, photos I never wanted to see. Her in that black dress. Her out of it. Him, right there. My hands go cold. My chest feels hollow. I used to think our marriage was damaged. Sitting in that dark kitchen, I realized the truth. Trust wasn't damaged. Trust was dead. I should have closed the laptop right there. Walked away, called a lawyer, done the normal, sane thing, but I kept scrolling. And that's when it went from cheating to war. There was a thread with my name in the title. Not Elias, not my husband, just him. Like I was an inconvenience, not a person. Lauren was texting with Sloan and another exec complaining that I was getting suspicious. Sloan's reply punched straight through the screen. Then handle him, or we'll handle him for you. I read it twice, 3 times. Then I saw why they were so confident. They were talking about my money, about how his whole portfolio is tied to the company anyway, about how if I ever left Lauren, I'd lose everything. I pulled up our accounts, joint, concentrated in Hollister Dynamics stock. All those years I thought I was being romantic, betting on her career, our future together. 15 years of work, risk, sacrifice, lined up like chips on their table. And for the first time that night, I felt something colder than hurt. I actually smiled. They thought I was blind. They thought I was trapped. They messed with the wrong guy. Once the anger cooled a little, the numbers man in me woke up. If they were going to use my own money against me, I wanted to see exactly how. I went back through the chats, slower this time. Names kept popping up around Graham and Lauren. Same executives, same special projects, same late-night strategy talk. I wrote the names down, one by one, next to the dates they mentioned big wins. Then I pulled up the trading history on our account and on Hollister Dynamics. Same dates, same patterns. Stock spikes right after certain dinners. Convenient sells right before bad news hit the market. This wasn't just adultery. This was a side business, a dirty one. There were little hints in the messages too. Don't put that in email. Use the other phone. Wait for the green light before you move. I started mapping it all out on a legal pad. Names, dates, trades, connections. My kitchen table turned into a crime board without the red string. Before that night, I was just a husband trying not to get hurt. By the time I finished saving every screenshot, every file, every report I could download, I wasn't just hurt anymore. I'd lit the fuse. Sometime past midnight, my phone buzzed on the table. Lauren. Don't wait up. Big project tonight. Might be late. Love you. I just stared at the screen for a long second. 15 years together, and even now she still thought I was that same blind, loyal idiot who would swallow anything as long as she added love you at the end. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. Then I typed, "Don't worry about me. Working on a new investment strategy. Big moves coming." I could almost see her reading that, frowning at the wording. She didn't reply. I poured myself 2 fingers of bourbon, then set the bottle back. I wasn't drinking to forget. Not tonight. I needed every thought sharp, because this was the line. Either I roll over, play the good, quiet husband and let them bleed me dry, or I start thinking like the man they clearly thought I'd never be. I opened a fresh notebook, wrote 1 sentence at the top of the page. Make them pay for every inch. Names went underneath it. Dates, ideas. Outside, the neighborhood was dead quiet. Inside, the old version of me was too. Enough is enough. There's only one guy I know who deals with this kind of ugly for a living. So the next morning I drive down to Deep Ellum and park outside a faded brick bar with a flickering sign, Rourke's Corner. Inside smells like old wood, bad decisions, and strong coffee. Hank Rourke is behind the counter, gray at the temples, shoulders still built like a cop who never really retired in his head. "You look like hell," he says. "Feel worse," I tell him, sliding my phone across the bar. "Start from the top." He puts on his readers, scrolls through the screenshots, the group chats, the photos, the trades, my wife, that Bentley, all of it. His jaw tightens, but his voice stays calm. After a long minute, he sets the phone down. "This isn't just cheating," he says. "This is organized, coordinated. You don't play checkers with people like this, Elias. You play chess." I nod. "So teach me." He pulls a yellow pad from under the bar and clicks a pen. "First rule, you never swing first in the open. You make moves in the dark." He starts drawing circles and arrows, names, positions, links, a revenge matrix. "You sure you want to go down this road?" he asks. I look him dead in the eye. I'm already a different man. Once Hank starts, it's like watching a mechanic pull apart an engine he's seen 1,000 times. At the top of the page he writes, Graham Hollister, underneath, core circle. Then he adds Lauren, Sloan, a handful of execs from the chats, board members, city contacts. Each name gets a circle. Each circle gets lines. "Every empire has an inner ring," he says. "Figure out who eats at the same table. You figure out who bleeds together." We go through what I found: dates, dinners, stock jumps, trips to that house in Lakewood. Hank marks weak spots next to each name: drinking problem, affairs, debt, political ambition, reputation to lose. People like this don't fear jail first, he says. They fear exposure, embarrassment, losing status. He flips to a new page. Media, he says, drawing boxes. Financial reporters, local news, people who hate corporate crooks. Another box. SEC, Fed contacts. Another, hackers, off the books. He looks up at me. You want justice? You don't walk in with a knife. You light fires in all the right places and let them run toward the wrong exits. I sit back, staring at the mess of ink on paper that looks uncomfortably like my life. So what's the real plan? I ask. Hank smiles, but there's no warmth in it. We don't just hit them, Elias, we make them destroy themselves. Once you decide you're at war, you stop relying on guesses. You start collecting proof. Hank hooked me up with a security company he trusts. I called them like any normal suburban husband. Yeah, heard about some break-ins in the neighborhood. Want to protect the house, the cars, my wife. The guy came out, took measurements, never knew he was wiring up my divorce. We put cameras on the front porch, the driveway, the side yard, wide enough to catch the street where that Bentley always rolled in. Notifications straight to my phone. A few nights later, there it was. Same car, same time window, same routine. Lauren walking fast, heels in her hand, slipping into the passenger seat like she was late for something that didn't involve me. Hank and I started tailing them. Not every night, just enough. Uptown office, private club downtown. But there was one address that kept repeating. Nice quiet street in Lakewood. Same house. Lights low. Curtains closed. Whose place is that? I asked, staring at the printout of our notes. Hank tapped the name we'd circled in red. Sloan Barrett. Business partner. Cleaner. Enforcer. And apparently, host. I looked over the routes, the time stamps, the license plate shots. Feelings can lie to you. People can lie to you. Patterns don't. The thing about men like Graham Hollister is they always think they're the only predator in the room. A few days after we pinned down Sloan's house, Hank called one of his old contacts downtown. Couple of favors, a late lunch, and we suddenly had access to something interesting. Court records. Graham's not just ruining your marriage, Hank said, dropping a folder on my kitchen table. He's already blown up his own. Inside was a divorce petition, filed 3 months ago by his wife, Evelyn Hollister. Grounds: infidelity, financial misconduct, emotional cruelty. Classic, except for one detail: the attachments. She'd hired her own private investigator. There were photos of Graham with women who weren't her, in places he definitely wasn't supposed to be. Logs of his travel, notes on meetings that lined up a little too neatly with the trades we'd flagged. Even references to offshore accounts and undisclosed assets. And then there was an internal complaint file, HR grievances about inappropriate behavior, quietly closed with payouts and promotions. This woman isn't blind, I said. Hank shook his head. No, she's methodical. She's been building her own case for years. For the first time since this started, I felt something close to hope. Because if there's one person a predator should fear, it's the spouse who finally runs out of fear. I closed the folder, looked at Hank and said, "Set up a meeting." He just nodded. She's been waiting for this. Highland Park feels like another planet. Perfect lawns, quiet streets, houses that look more like museums than homes. Hank and I pulled up in front of the Hollister place, and for a second I wondered what the hell I was doing there. A cheated-on husband from Frisco walking into the lion's den from the side door. Evelyn answered the door herself. No maid, no assistant. Just her. Early 50s, controlled, expensive without trying. The kind of woman who's seen everything and forgot most of it on purpose. We sat in a living room bigger than my whole first apartment. Hank laid out our folder on the glass coffee table. Screenshots, trade patterns, photos, the Lakewood house, the chats about me, about other women. I watched her eyes, not her hands. No shock, no denial, just a slow, cold focus. "I always knew there was more," she said quietly. "I just didn't know how deep it went." I told her what they'd done with my portfolio, what they were planning if I became a problem. She listened, then looked straight at me. What do you want, Mr. Kane? Revenge or justice? At this point, I said, I don't see a difference. She nodded once. Then we worked together. Once we shook hands on that, everything changed. It wasn't just my broken marriage anymore. It was his whole rotten empire. Evelyn poured coffee, sat back down, and slid a new stack of papers across to me. Invites, internal memos, event decks. All for the same thing. The Hollister Dynamics Children's Charity Gala. Every year, she said, he uses this event to polish his halo. 500 of the most powerful people in Dallas. Donors, judges, councilmen, investors, media. Graham on stage talking about values and community. I flipped through the pages. Lone Star Grand Hotel, ballroom, press list, speech order, AV layout. It hit me all at once. You're telling me the entire food chain shows up in one room to clap for him? She gave the smallest smile. They love a good performance. Hank leaned forward. What if we rewrite the ending? The idea settled in the air. Ugly, perfect, inevitable. Not some courtroom no one sees. Not rumors in the shadows. We put his real life on screen in front of the exact people he's been fooling for years. Evelyn looked at the date on the invite, tapped it with one manicured finger. 2 weeks, she said. That's your window. And just like that, the gala stopped being his big night and became ours. If you're going to hit somebody like Graham and Lauren, you can't just do it on paper. At some point, it has to hurt in public. A few days after we planned the gala, I saw it on Lauren's calendar. Client lunch, uptown, 12:30 p.m. The restaurant name told me everything. One of those trendy bistros where the food is small, the prices are big, and everybody pretends they're not watching each other. I checked with Hank. He checked with one of his people. Yeah, he said. Graham loves that place. Sloan too. They treat it like their private stage. If they wanted a stage, I'd give them a show. First move. I rented a Bentley for a day. Same model, same color as Graham's. Petty? Maybe. Symbolic? Absolutely. Second move. I called Maria, a friend of Hank's. Stunning, sharp, used to social engineering gigs. I didn't need a fake affair. I needed a distraction with good instincts. The last piece fell into my hand that morning when Lauren rushed out the door for back-to-back meetings. Black lace underwear on the bedroom floor. She'd done it again. No underwear, new dress, same story. I slipped them into my pocket, checked my watch, and smiled to myself. Time to make a scene. We pulled up to the bistro right on time, Maria on my arm, laughing at some harmless joke I barely heard, my mind locked on one table. I spotted them in seconds. Graham, Sloan, 2 other executives, and Lauren, sitting a little too straight, smiling a little too wide, the kind of smile you wear when your whole ego is in the room. I walked straight over, no hesitation. Men feel it when another man walks in with purpose. Conversations dipped. Eyes followed us. Lauren, I said, calm as Sunday morning, you forgot something at home. She froze. Elias, what are you doing here? I reached into my jacket, pulled out the black lace, and laid it gently on the edge of her salad plate. You left these on the bedroom floor, I said. Thought you might need them for your presentations. The room went silent. Then the whispers started, low and sharp, cutting through the air. Graham's face turned the color of bad meat. Sloane's jaw tightened. Oh, I added, almost as an afterthought. And Lauren? I moved our investments this morning. Couldn't keep all my eggs in one crooked basket. Her eyes finally showed it. Fear. I turned to Maria. Ready to go? We walked out slow, letting the silence hang behind us. This wasn't the win. This was just the first crack. We're just getting started. Walking out of that bistro, I could feel every eye on my back. But the only reaction I cared about was at that table. Right before I turned away, I leaned just close enough for Lauren to hear me and said low, Diversification, Lauren. You know what that means. I'm not tied to Hollister anymore. The color drained out of her face, not because of the underwear, because I'd just kicked out the one leg they thought they had me standing on. That afternoon, my phone started buzzing. Not from her. She went quiet. from people we knew. "Hey man, you okay? Just saw something wild at lunch." Screenshots from social media. Someone had already posted about the wife who got her panties dropped at Uptown Bistro. By the time Lauren finally called that night, her voice wasn't cold and superior. It was tight, controlled. "Elias, what are you doing? You're overreacting. You're going to ruin everything." There it was, that little shake, that edge. "This is me reacting," I said. "Everything else? You and Graham already ruined that." She tried to regain ground, to threaten lawyers, money, my reputation. But I'd heard it, under all that noise, for the first time. He finally looked scared, through her. The next morning there was an envelope on my doorstep. No stamp, no return address, just my name in block letters. Inside was a single photo, me and Hank at Rourke's corner. I was leaning over the bar, showing him my phone. He was mid-sentence, that cop look on his face. Somebody had been close enough to get a clean shot. On the back, in the same block letters, "Stop now or we'll stop you." No signature, no logo, no need. The message was clear. Graham's people knew I wasn't just some hurt husband crying in his driveway. I snapped a picture and texted it to Hank. He called right away. "They're watching us," I said. "Good," he answered. "That means we're under their skin. Desperate people make mistakes." "This isn't some bar fight, Hank. These guys have money, lawyers, security. And you've got proof, leverage, and nothing left to lose," he shot back. "You still in, or was that restaurant stunt your big finale?" I looked at the note again, felt that old version of me twitch, then go still. "In?" I said. "I'm just getting warmed up." I folded the photo, slid it into my desk drawer. If they want a war, I'll give them a damn war. Hank always said, "If it feels bigger than you, you're probably not the only one in it." I found out he was right in an old warehouse on the edge of town. Cold concrete floor, folding table, 6 metal chairs, me, Hank, and 4 men who all had the same tired, tight look I'd been seeing in the mirror. Tom Bradley went first. Mid-40s, drives a cab now. His wife used to work at Hollister. She said no to one of Graham's special projects. She got fired. Panic, depression, 3 months in a psych ward. Tom's been driving nights to keep the lights on. Then Robert Chen, former accountant, found strange trades, tried to blow the whistle. Suddenly no firm would touch him. Now he stacks shelves at a grocery store while the suits who buried him buy vacation homes. Frank Dwyer's voice cracked, talking about his daughter Kelly, 19, intern. Mentored by Graham, case dismissed. She dropped out of school and barely leaves her room. Last was Patrick Barrett, councilman, Sloane's husband, the one they planned to ride into City Hall. When they finished, the room felt heavier. But I felt lighter. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't overreacting. We weren't alone. Once every man at that table laid his story down, Hank flipped to a clean page and drew a box in the middle. "This isn't about making you feel better," he said. "This is about making sure they never do it again, so we don't swing wild. We go in phases." At the top he wrote, "Phase 1, Information Warfare." "We leak smart," he said. "Financial records to the right reporters, trading patterns to the SEC, internal dirt to people who hate corporate saints. No rants, just facts that hurt." Next line, Phase 2, Social Ruin. "Public moments, carefully timed. We don't lie. We just let their real behavior show up where their fake reputation lives." Then, Phase 3, Financial Crash. "Use their greed against them. Robert, you help map weaknesses. We time pressure so the market finishes the job." Last, Phase 4, Personal Reckoning. Legal heat, broken alliances, no threats, just consequences. He started assigning roles. Tom handles surveillance. Robert runs the numbers. Frank talks to honest cops. Patrick exposes city deals. "And you," Hank said, looking at me, "are the one who won't hide when it counts." I looked at that plan and felt something settle inside me. You don't spit on a man's life and walk away. Actions have consequences. We decided to start where men like Graham feel safest, in the numbers. Robert came over one night with his old company laptop. "They never revoked my access," he said. "Too arrogant or too lazy. Either way, it was our opening." He logged into systems he was locked out of years ago, fingers moving like he'd been waiting for this moment. We weren't looking for gossip. We were pulling raw data, trade logs, internal reports, emails that lined up a little too perfectly with stock moves. Robert zipped everything into encrypted files and passed them to Hank. Hank pushed them through anonymous channels we'd set up. Burner emails, secure uploads, no names, no drama, just hard numbers and timelines. We sent packets to a couple of financial journalists known for hating corporate golden boys, and a clean set straight to a contact at the SEC. For a few hours, nothing. Just silence and the hum of the fridge. Then Robert's phone buzzed. One of the reporters replied with a single line, "Is this real?" Robert smiled, tired but sharp. "Oh, it's real." We watched as inboxes lit up, forwards multiplied, and a new, quiet current started moving in their world. The first domino fell. While Robert hit them in the systems, Tom hit them in the streets. He turned his taxi into a rolling surveillance unit. Downtown, uptown, Lakewood. If Graham, Sloan, or anyone in their circle needed a ride, chances were they'd see Tom's car somewhere in their orbit. Nobody thinks twice about a cab hanging around a hotel or an office tower. Tom kept a small notebook on the passenger seat. Time, place, who walked in with who, how long they stayed, license plates. He'd swing by that Lakewood house at random hours and log what he saw: cars in the driveway, lights on, unfamiliar faces slipping in under the radar. Patterns started forming. Same faces from Hollister, same times. But then new players, city officials, staffers from the council, a deputy from the mayor's office. Not in public meetings, quiet dinners, back entrances, Sunday afternoons. One night, Tom dropped a file on the warehouse table. Printed photos, notes, maps. "Look here," he said, pointing. "They're not just selling stock, they're buying access." Hank matched dates with public records. It lined up. City contracts, tax breaks, permits pushed through fast. This wasn't just corporate rot anymore. This thing was wired into the city. The more we pushed, the more we felt it. Little shifts in the air. Hollister stock started twitching. A reporter called Robert with follow-up questions. One of Tom's usual spots suddenly had private security parked nearby. Then it got less subtle. I was leaving Rourke's Corner one night, keys in my hand, when two guys in expensive suits stepped away from a black SUV and moved toward me. Not cops. Too polished. Too relaxed. "Mr. Kane," the taller one said, like he was greeting a client, "you've been very busy. Some important people think it's time you refocus on your own life." The shorter one stepped in closer. "Walk away. Stop digging. Go back to your little home office and your little trades. You're not built for this." My jaw clenched, but before I could answer, I heard Hank behind me. "Afternoon, gentlemen." He was leaning on an old aluminum bat, casual, like it just lived in his hand. The short one reached inside his jacket. Bad move. Hank's bat came down on his wrist with a crack that echoed off the brick. The man went to his knees, cursing. The tall one stiffened. Hank's voice stayed calm. "You picked the wrong bar." When fists don't work, men like Graham reach for badges. A few days after the parking lot, I was at home, answering emails, when red and blue lights washed over my office walls. I looked out front and saw 3 squad cars lined up at the curb. I met them at the door. "Elias Kane?" "Yes, sir." "You're under arrest for stalking, harassment, and making terroristic threats." It felt like a bad joke. Then I saw the lead detective's eyes, flat, tired, hungry. The kind of man who's been in debt longer than he's been in uniform. "Against who?" I asked as they cuffed me. "Graham Hollister and his associates. We've got statements, Mr. Kane. You've been following them, showing up where you're not wanted, interfering with their business." Interfering with their business. That's what they called trying to stop a criminal ring. At the station, they took my belt, my phone, my fingerprints. Frank managed to get a call through to a couple of old law enforcement contacts, started pulling the detective's history before I even hit the holding cell. Didn't matter. I was still sitting on a cold bench, staring at cinder block walls, hearing that charge list on repeat. That was the moment it hit me. They hadn't just messed with my marriage or my money anymore. They'd crossed the line. Time moves different in a holding cell. No windows, no phone, just a metal bench and your own thoughts trying to eat you alive. We'd talked about this moment, Hank and I, the point where they'd try to put me in a cage and call it procedure. If they came for me, he'd stop holding back. Somewhere between the second and third time they walked past with the dinner cart, I heard it. A TV down the hall, volume low, but my name and Hollister Dynamics in the same sentence. Then SEC, allegations, breaking story. A young cop walked by, glanced in at me, then did a double take like he'd just realized the guy in the cell and the guy on the news were the same person. Hank had flipped the switch. Every file, every screenshot, every trade pattern dumped in one coordinated wave. Reporters, financial blogs, SEC inboxes, a quiet packet to the FBI, not rumors, documents. By the time a lawyer I'd never met showed up, sent by one of Frank's old contacts, the storm was already outside the station doors. Cameras, questions, phone calls to the DA. They processed my bail faster than they'd booked me. When I stepped back into the night air, my phone lit up with notifications. The city had woken up. If there's one god men like Graham truly worship, it isn't reputation, it's the stock price. The next morning, I sat at my kitchen table, free but still wired, and pulled up the chart for Hollister Dynamics. I watched it in real time. Open. Already red. Within an hour, it was a cliff. Down 10%. 20. Commentators scrambling for phrases that made it sound less like what it was. A panic. Then the headline crawled across the bottom of a business channel. SEC announces formal investigation into Hollister Dynamics. Phones started ringing. Tom's burner. Roberts, Hanks, Patrick's. Board members were calling emergency meetings. Investment funds were reassessing exposure. Lawyers were issuing statements with a lot of words that all meant the same thing. We're in trouble. By midday, the stock had lost over 60% of its value. People who'd toasted Graham as a genius the week before were now acting like they'd never heard of him. Evelyn texted me a single screenshot of the intraday chart. No caption. She didn't need one. This is what happens when a company is built on greed, fear, and other people's pain. Eventually, greed meets gravity. Money panics first. Public opinion comes next. 2 days after the stock crashed, Evelyn held a press conference on the courthouse steps. No tears, no drama. Just a woman who'd finally decided she was done being quiet. She talked about 30 years with Graham. The late nights, the assistants, the way he used charity like a shield. Then she handed out copies of what she'd collected. HR complaints, internal emails, patterns of promotions that followed silence, not performance. The real hit was the audio. A recording of Graham and Sloan planning how to neutralize problems, names coded but intent clear. Talking about me like I was a fly to be swatted. Talking about other women like they were replaceable parts. An hour later, Patrick called his own conference. He looked wrecked, no spin. He announced he was dropping out of the mayor's race, filed for separation from Sloan, and said straight into the cameras, "I was being used. I'm not proud of how long I ignored the signs, but I won't be their cover anymore." You could feel it shift. Online, on talk radio, at kitchen tables. For the first time, people stopped saying, "What a successful man," and started saying, "What a predator." In the middle of all that noise, my own house went quiet. I came home one evening, unlocked the front door, and felt it before I saw it. Closets open, hangers empty, the jewelry box gone, her favorite pieces missing from the walls. On the kitchen counter there was a note. No apology, no ownership, just blame. "You've destroyed everything. Our life, our future. Your ego couldn't handle my success. I hope all this was worth it." She'd cleaned out her personal accounts, grabbed what she could carry, and slipped out without a word. No, can we talk? No, can we fix this? Just an exit and a guilt trip. A year earlier, that would have gutted me. I'd have chased, begged, tried to patch a sinking ship with my own hands. This time, I read it once, set it down, and made coffee. Because here's the truth you learn the hard way. Love without loyalty isn't love, it's leverage. I didn't call her, didn't text, didn't ask where she went. I didn't lose a wife that day. I lost the illusion that I still had one. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't scared of that. The headlines were loud, but the fight wasn't over, not even close. The charges against me were still hanging there, like a loaded gun on the wall. Graham's camp started pushing back. False allegations, disgruntled former employees, the usual PR bleach. A couple of talking heads even floated the idea that I was the one running some scheme for attention. That was fine. Let them talk. We were busy tightening screws. Hank and I spent nights cross-checking everything. Dates, files, screenshots, recordings. If it had my name anywhere near it, we made sure it was clean, sourced, backed up 3 different ways. Frank stayed on the cops who still had a spine, making sure the dirty ones knew someone was watching them too. And then there was the gala. We walked the Lone Star Grand Ballroom with the hotel's AV guy, smiling like event planners. Checked where the projectors fed from, where the soundboard sat, which laptop ran the slides. Hank asked harmless questions about backups, power, fail-safes. We rehearsed the timing, the handoff, the outage, the switch. Over and over. No improvising on this one. This wasn't a bar stunt or a Twitter thread. At that scale, with those people in the room, there was no room for mistakes. For all the noise outside, the real break came from inside their walls. It started with a message to one of Hank's secure inboxes. No name, just, "I work at Hollister. I can't keep watching this. I want out." We didn't trust it at first. Could have been a trap. But the next line changed that. "I'll trade everything I have for immunity." Through a friend of a friend at the DA's office, Hank set up a quiet deal. Limited immunity in exchange for verifiable evidence and sworn testimony. No theatrics. Just paper and signatures. A week later, a thumb drive slid across a table in a small conference room. Internal chats, private meeting notes, off-book calendars, recordings from strategy sessions, where Graham and Sloan laid out exactly how to bury complaints and time trades around inside information. Robert went through it all, line by line. "It matches," he said. "Dates, amounts, even phrases. This fills in everything we couldn't prove." We finally had the missing pieces. Who knew what, and when they knew it. No more misunderstanding, no more isolated incidents. This wasn't circumstantial anymore. This was a timeline of a crime spree. I looked at Hank, then at the pile of evidence. "Yeah," he said quietly. "Now we have the kill shot." The night before the gala felt a lot quieter than it should have. No crowds, no cameras, just me, Hank, and a checklist spread across my kitchen table. Backup drives, encrypted copies, duplicate triggers in case the first plan failed. Every file that could ruin them existed in at least 3 places, none of them easy to erase. We went over escape routes, too. Doors at the Lone Star Grand, side hallways, service exits. "Hope we don't need these," Hank said, "but hope is not a plan." Tom had his parking arranged. Robert knew exactly where to sit with a clear view of the stage and his phone ready. The reporters we trusted had their invitations confirmed, plus a quiet heads up. You'll want to be rolling during the keynote. Last call was to a contact at the FBI. Not a dramatic movie moment, just a calm voice confirming agents would be present in the vicinity. When Hank finally left, the house was still. I stood there in the dark, looking at the life they'd tried to turn into leverage. I've never been a man who starts fights, but I've always finished what other people insist on starting. Tomorrow wasn't revenge anymore. It was execution, and the signal was set. The Lone Star. Grand Ballroom looked like money had thrown itself at every surface and stuck. Crystal chandeliers, white tablecloths, tuxedos and gowns and practiced laughs. 500 people who ran this city. Bankers, judges, donors, council members, the kind of crowd Graham lived to impress. He was in his element, shaking hands, clapping shoulders, leaning in close with that "I'm your best friend" smile. If you didn't know better, you'd think he was the hero of this story. I took a seat near the back, tux rented, tie a little loose, just another middle-aged man in a black suit. Nobody looks twice at a guy who isn't trying to be seen, but I knew where everyone that mattered really was. Hank near the AV booth, chatting with staff like he belonged there. Tom close to the side doors, eyes on the room and the exits. Robert seated with a group of minor investors, phone on silent, video ready. 3 reporters spaced out around the room, cameras disguised as casual phones. Up front, Evelyn sat at the head table, diamonds on, face calm. Patrick beside her, jaw tight, eyes forward. The lights dimmed a little as they announced Graham's keynote. My phone buzzed once in my pocket. Hank's message. Position set. I looked up at the stage. Showtime. Graham took the stage like he owned the room, because up until that night, he did. Ladies and gentlemen, he started, voice smooth, practiced. Thank you for being here to support our community. At Hollister Dynamics, we believe in giving back. That word, community, almost made me laugh. The same man who chewed up families, careers, marriages, now talking about giving back like he hadn't been taking for decades. The crowd applauded in all the right places. Little nods, polite smiles, the usual performance. He scanned the room as he talked. Investors here, judges there, city officials front and center, power counting power. His eyes passed over Evelyn at the head table. She sat perfectly calm, hands folded, face unreadable. If he noticed anything different in her, he didn't show it. My seat in the back gave me a clear view of the projection screen behind him. Corporate logo, stock photos of happy kids and smiling employees. A lie, 10 feet tall. In my hand, under the tablecloth, was the small remote Hank had rigged. One button, one job. I listened to Graham say, "Tonight is about trust." I pressed my thumb halfway down, waited for Hank's signal in my pocket. The blackout was next. It only took 3 seconds to undo 30 years of pretending. One heartbeat, Graham still talking about trust and responsibility. The next, the chandeliers flickered, and the room went black. A few people gasped. Someone laughed nervously. In those 3 seconds, the hotel's AV system flipped from his presentation to ours. When the lights came back up, the logo behind him was gone. In its place was a photo of Graham pinning a young employee against a desk, her face turned away, his hand not even bothering to hide. Then another, and another. Different women, different years, same pattern. Audio kicked in next. His voice unmistakable. Bury that complaint. Promote her, keep her quiet. If he keeps digging, we'll handle him. The final clip was what made the room turn. Graham and Sloan talking about me. Elias? He's not going anywhere. His money's tied to us. If he acts up, we ruin him. The polite murmurs turned into sharp whispers, then anger. A woman near the front stood up shaking. Someone shouted, "Disgusting!" Another yelled, "Is this real?" I stayed in my chair, watching him spin around, finally seeing his own life on screen. Actions. Consequences. Graham tried to recover, like all practiced liars do. He stepped toward the mic, hands raised, voice straining for calm. This is clearly manipulated, taken out of context. Ladies and gentlemen, if you'll just... And then his mic went dead. It wasn't an accident. Down near the press row, one of the reporters we'd tipped stood up. "Mr. Hollister, care to comment on the SEC investigation that opened this morning?" Another followed. "What about the internal complaints your board ignored?" A third, "Is that you on those recordings, sir?" They moved toward the stage, not afraid of him anymore. Cameras up, flash on, every second of his panic getting captured from 10 angles. He turned away from the screen and scanned the crowd for an ally. Board members looked down. Donors looked away. Judges adjusted their cuffs like they'd never shaken his hand. Then he saw me. Back of the room. No mask, no smile. Just a man he'd called Replaceable, still standing. For a moment, the noise in the ballroom went soft around the edges. It was just the two of us, locked in a look that finally felt honest. For the first time since this started, he wasn't angry. He was afraid. When predators lose control, they flail. When survivors take it back, they don't need to shout. Evelyn stood from the head table and walked toward the stage like she'd been planning this step for years. Someone tried to stop her. They thought she was going up there to defend her husband. She didn't even glance at him. She took a spare mic from the event staff, tapped it once, and the room quieted on instinct. All those powerful people, suddenly waiting on the one person they'd never really looked at. "My name is Evelyn Hollister," she said. "I've been married to that man for 30 years. You could hear a glass set down 3 tables away. For 30 years, I watched him build an image off charity, off this company, off all of you. And for 30 years I stayed quiet while he destroyed people behind closed doors. She lifted a folder, the same one she'd shown me weeks earlier. These aren't rumors. These are complaints your institutions ignored. Trades your regulators missed. Lives my husband decided were disposable. She turned to look at Graham. He tried to speak. Nothing came out. I was afraid for a long time, she said. Afraid of losing the life we built. Afraid of what he'd do to me. She faced the room again. That ends tonight. You could feel it hit. Not just him. Everyone. The story had changed. Right after Evelyn said, "That ends tonight," the room didn't know what to do. Half the guests stared at the screens, half stared at Graham, everyone wondering if this was some ugly stunt that would blow over like every other scandal in this city. Then the doors at the back opened. They didn't storm in. No shouting, no guns out, no movie nonsense. Just 3 FBI agents in suits, badges visible, moving with that calm, controlled energy that says, "We already have what we need." One of them stepped up to the edge of the stage. "Graham Hollister?" He tried to laugh it off, tried to play the host. "Gentlemen, this really isn't the—" "Sir, you're under arrest for securities fraud, conspiracy, and obstruction of justice." The agent turned him around and cuffed him under his own spotlight. You could feel the whole room flinch. Judges looking suddenly very interested in their shoes. Donors pulling their hands back like they'd just touched a hot stove. Phones came up, cameras rolled. The image was too strong to ignore. A man who'd spent his life above everyone else, now walking off his own stage with steel on his wrists. As they led him past the tables, he glanced my way. I didn't smile. I just finally let myself breathe. Predators rarely hunt alone. Take down the alpha, and the rest start running in every direction. The morning after the gala, the news cycle was already chewing on Graham's mugshot when a new headline hit. Senior Hollister executive Sloan Barrett arrested at Lakewood home. They took her off her own front porch. No gala dress, no stage, just sweatpants, messy hair, and a face that finally matched the things she'd done in the dark. The warrant list read like our notes: conspiracy, witness tampering, destruction of evidence. Patrick held his own press conference that afternoon. No fancy backdrop this time, just a small podium and a tired man. He announced he was suspending his campaign indefinitely and filing for divorce. "I ignored too much for too long," he said. "That ends today. They won't use my name or my office as cover ever again." Inside Hollister, panic turned into collapse. People started flipping to save themselves. Emails surfaced. Private chats leaked. The inner circle became a circle of knives. And Lauren? She finally resurfaced, through a lawyer, of course, offering cooperation in exchange for immunity. She'd ridden their power as long as it felt safe. Now she wanted off the ship. One by one, every domino we'd mapped out started to drop. Taking a man's freedom hurts him. Taking his empire finishes the job. After the arrests, Hollister Dynamics tried to limp along. Statements about business continuity, emergency calls with investors, the board looking for some miracle replacement. But you can't slap a fresh logo on rot and call it healthy. Within weeks, trading halted. Lenders backed away. Contracts froze. Then the headline landed: Hollister Dynamics files for bankruptcy. Assets frozen pending investigation. A lot of people lost money that day. Retirements, college funds, folks who never knew what was happening behind those glass walls. I'd feel worse if I hadn't warned Lauren months earlier, not with words, but with actions. 3 months before I ever touched her laptop, I'd started moving our money out. Quiet shifts, little sells, new positions in competitors and boring, solid companies that don't need abuse and manipulation to turn a profit. While Hollister cratered, my account moved the other way. Slow, steady, almost disrespectful in how calm it looked compared to their crash. I didn't brag, didn't post screenshots, didn't send any told-you-so texts. I just sat at my desk in that same house she once mocked, looked at the numbers, and finally felt it land. I took my life back. Life got very quiet after the noise died down. No more late-night Bentleys in my driveway. No more fake team events on shared calendars. Just a house in Frisco that finally felt like mine, not a stage set for someone else's performance. Lauren disappeared from the industry. Not officially banned, just radioactive. Companies like clean scandals they can distance from, not walking reminders of what they allowed. Last I heard, through a legal email, She'd taken her immunity deal and moved states. Tom's wife got real help this time, not just pills and pressure. Tom left the cab and started a security firm with Hank's referrals. Robert now works forensic accounting for the people who hunt guys like Graham. Frank's daughter, Kelly, went back to school somewhere far away from Dallas and its ghosts. One night, months later, I sat at Rourke's corner with Hank. Same scarred bar, same bad coffee, different man in my seat. He poured 2 drinks, slid one over. "You did it," he said. I shook my head. "No, they did this to themselves. I just lit the match." The man I used to be, the one who thought love without respect was still love, that playing nice kept you safe, he's gone. What's left isn't perfect, but he won't ever let someone call him replaceable again. People ask if I exaggerated this story, if I twisted things to make myself look better, to make them look worse. I didn't have to. The truth was ugly enough on its own. I didn't hack anyone, didn't plant fake evidence, didn't frame an innocent man. All I did was drag what they really were into the same light they used to polish their image. And that's the part nobody likes to say out loud. There's a price for self-respect, for finally saying, "No more," and meaning it. You can lose money, you can lose people, you can lose the version of yourself that was easier to live with, but you sleep, and you look in the mirror without flinching. So if someone ever looks you in the eye and says, "You're replaceable," remember this, staying silent is a decision too. It just benefits them, not you. I'm not a hero. I'm a man who was pushed too far and pushed back harder. Sometimes justice doesn't show up in a suit and a smile. Sometimes justice needs a ruthless man. If this hits you anywhere in the gut, share it. Drop a comment. Tell me whose side you're on. And if you want more stories they'd rather keep buried, hit follow and stick around.